The night sky above Puerto Rico was clearer than usual when John Miller noticed something strange on his monitor. The stars twinkled peacefully, unaware that everything was about to change. John had worked at the Arecibo Observatory for 15 years and he had never seen signals like these before. "Hey, can you take a look at this?" he called to his colleague, Mary Dawson, who was sipping coffee nearby. Mary walked over, her eyes narrowing as she studied the unusual pattern on the screen. "That's not natural," she said quietly, "and it's definitely not one of ours." John nodded, his heart beating faster. "I think we need to call Washington." Within hours, other observatories around the world confirmed the signals. Something was approaching Earth, something massive and clearly not from our solar system. The scientific community buzzed with excitement, but government officials responded with caution and concern. At the Pentagon, Lisa Bennett stared at the reports coming in from NASA and various space agencies. As a military intelligence officer with 20 years of experience, she knew trouble when she saw it. These signals showed patterns, too regular, too purposeful. "Sir, I believe these are communications," she told General Adams. "Based on the complexity and structure, I'd say they're from an advanced civilization, and they're getting closer." The general frowned. "Are you saying we're about to have first contact, Bennett?" "Yes, sir. And based on what I'm seeing in these patterns, they've done this before, many times." The world governments decided to keep the information quiet while they prepared for possible contact, but the choice was taken from them 3 days later when massive ships appeared in orbit, visible even in daylight. Dark, angular shapes that blocked the sun like metal clouds. All electronic communications on Earth were suddenly interrupted. On every screen, phones, computers, televisions, the same image appeared. Tall, slender beings with grayish-blue skin and large black eyes. "People of Earth," the creature spoke in perfect English. "We are the Vracarians. Your planet is now under our protection and control. Resistance is unnecessary and will result in punishment. Cooperation will be rewarded. This is not a negotiation." The broadcast ended as suddenly as it had begun. For a moment, the world was silent. Then chaos erupted. Emergency meetings were called in capitals across the globe. In Washington, President Griffith ordered immediate diplomatic contact while placing military forces on high alert. Lisa Bennett was assigned to analyze everything about the aliens, their language, technology, possible weaknesses. "They speak our languages perfectly," she told the crisis team. "That means they've been watching us for a long time. They know us, but we know nothing about them." The Vracarians agreed to a meeting with Earth's representatives at the United Nations headquarters. Diplomats from every major nation gathered, hoping for peaceful resolution. President Griffith herself led the American delegation. The alien representatives towered over the humans as they entered the General Assembly Hall. Their movements were fluid, almost graceful. The lead Vracarian introduced himself as High Commander Zoll. "We appreciate your willingness to meet," President Griffith began. "Earth welcomes peaceful contact with other civilizations, but we must insist on maintaining our sovereignty." High Commander Zoll's expression didn't change. "Your sovereignty is a concept we do not recognize. Your species is underdeveloped. We will guide your evolution and utilize your planet's resources. This arrangement benefits all." "And if we refuse this arrangement?" asked the Chinese premier. "Refusal indicates developmental unfitness," Zoll replied. "Unfitness requires correction." The meeting ended in deadlock. As the world leaders conferred afterward, Lisa Bennett worked frantically, analyzing recordings of the aliens' speech patterns and body language. "They see us as primitives," she reported. "There's a pattern in their communications similar to 17 other planetary systems they've mentioned. I believe they've done this before, many times. They conquer worlds systematically." Her warning came too late. 24 hours after the failed talks, the Vracarians demonstrated their power. Without warning, they destroyed Lagos, Nigeria. 8 million people gone in seconds from concentrated energy beams fired from orbit. "This was your first correction," announced High Commander Zoll in another global broadcast. "Your militaries will stand down. Your governments will submit. Your resources are now ours." The next disobedience will result in the loss of 2 cities. Terror spread across the globe. Many governments immediately surrendered. Others prepared for a fight they could not win. The world's military forces launched everything they had at the alien ships. Nuclear missiles, fighter jets, orbital weapons platforms. All were swatted away like flies or simply disappeared before making contact. 6 more cities were destroyed in retaliation. In rural Montana, far from the initial attacks, Frank Carter watched the news with growing anger. The former Marine had retired to a quiet life after 3 tours overseas, but war had found him again, this time on home soil. He was checking his old service rifle when he noticed strange lights in the evening sky. Frank grabbed his binoculars and watched as 3 smaller alien craft descended into the forest about 2 miles from his cabin. He knew what he had to do. Moving silently through familiar woods, Frank approached the landing site. He could see several Ricarians exit their craft, wearing what looked like protective suits. They moved with confidence, scanning the area with handheld devices, completely unaware of his presence. Frank watched them for hours, noting how carefully they avoided direct contact with the environment. When one alien removed its glove to collect a soil sample, it quickly recoiled when a mosquito landed on its exposed skin. The reaction was severe. The alien convulsed and its companions rushed to apply some kind of medication. Interesting, Frank whispered to himself. Not so tough after all. When the aliens returned to their ship for the night, Frank made his move. He approached one of their sensor devices left outside and deliberately contaminated it with soil, plants, and a dead mosquito he found nearby. The next morning, when a Ricarian retrieved the device without protective gloves, the reaction was immediate. The alien collapsed in what appeared to be anaphylactic shock. Its companions rushed it back to their ship, leaving behind a dropped weapon in their panic. Frank quickly grabbed the alien gun. It was lighter than it looked and seemed to respond to his touch. As he examined it, the remaining aliens emerged from their ship, weapons raised. Frank didn't hesitate. He fired the alien weapon, surprised at its power as it disintegrated one of the approaching Ricarians. The others retreated, clearly not expecting resistance. "You picked the wrong planet," Frank muttered as he retreated into the woods with his prize. Over the next few days, Frank observed more alien patrols and confirmed his theory. Earth's bacteria were toxic to the Ricarians. Their protective suits weren't just for show, they were essential survival gear. Using a ham radio, he managed to contact a growing resistance network and share his discovery. The information spread quickly through hidden channels. The Ricarians controlled the cities and the airwaves, but they had underestimated humanity's resilience. All across the planet, people began to fight back, armed with the knowledge of their enemy's weakness. The invasion had begun, but the war was just getting started. And despite their superior technology, the Ricarians were about to learn a harsh lesson about the species they had so gravely underestimated. 6 months had passed since the Ricarians arrived. The world was a different place now. All major cities had fallen under alien control. Massive processing centers stood where parks and schools once existed. Humans were taken there for study or forced labor. The aliens moved freely through the streets, their tall forms becoming a common sight, though no less terrifying. Commander Samantha Wright looked out from her hidden observation post at what remained of Denver. Once a vibrant city nestled against the Rocky Mountains, it was now a hub of alien activity. Their architecture jutted oddly against the Colorado sky, all sharp angles and metallic surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Report," she whispered into her comm device. "Patrol patterns unchanged," came the quiet response from Bill Jackson, her best scout. "They're still moving in groups of 3, same times, same routes." Samantha nodded to herself. The Ricarians were intelligent and powerful, but they were also predictable. They followed routines rigidly, seemingly unable to grasp that this very predictability made them vulnerable to human guerrilla tactics. "Any sign of the shipment?" she asked. "Coming in from the east entrance. 4 guards, 1 transport vehicle." "Perfect. Maintain position until my signal." Samantha checked her makeshift weapon, a modified water gun filled with a mixture of soil bacteria cultivated by their science team. Frank Carter's discovery had spread worldwide through hidden radio networks. What began as isolated resistance groups had grown into an organized movement. They called themselves simply the Resistance, lacking the time or inclination for more creative names. 20 minutes later, the alien transport approached the ambush point. Samantha gave the signal, and chaos erupted. Homemade smoke bombs obscured the street. The aliens reached for their advanced weapons, but the human attackers had the advantage of surprise. Water balloons filled with bacteria-laden mud splattered against the Ricarians' protective suits, finding tiny gaps in their armor. The aliens fell one by one, their bodies reacting violently to Earth's microscopic life forms. Within minutes, the humans had secured the transport and its precious cargo, medical supplies and food meant for the alien overseers. "Load it up, quick," Samantha ordered. "We have 3 minutes before reinforcements arrive." Their timing was perfect. The resistance fighters disappeared into hidden tunnels just as alien aircraft screamed overhead, searching for the attackers who had once again struck and vanished. Deep beneath the ruins of a shopping mall, the resistance had established one of many hidden bunkers across North America. Similar bases existed worldwide, connected through coded radio transmissions and old ham radio operators who had become the heroes of this new war. Paul Dixon hunched over a microscope in the makeshift laboratory. Before the invasion, he had been a biochemist at a pharmaceutical company. Now he worked tirelessly to understand the aliens' biology from the few specimens they had captured. "Any progress?" Samantha asked as she entered the lab after debriefing her team. Paul looked up, exhaustion etched on his face. "Yes, finally. The bacteria that affect them most severely are completely harmless to us. Their immune systems never evolved to handle Earth microbes. It's like what happened when Europeans first came to America, but much, much worse for them. Can we weaponize it further? Something airborne, maybe?" Paul nodded slowly. "Theoretically, but we'd need access to their environmental systems. Their ships and buildings have air filtration that would catch anything we could develop. Then we find a way in," Samantha said simply. In another section of the bunker, Kevin Howard worked surrounded by salvaged computer equipment and alien technology. At 24, he had been a computer science student when the invasion happened. Now he was the Resistance's best hope for understanding alien communications. "I've got something," he called out as Samantha passed by. "You need to see this." On his screen, alien text scrolled alongside a rough translation. "It's from their command network. I finally cracked the encryption." Samantha stared at the screen. "Can you explain what I'm looking at?" Kevin nodded eagerly. "It's their assessment of Earth before invasion. They monitored our broadcasts, TV shows, movies, news, for decades. They concluded we were divided, weak, and would surrender quickly based on our entertainment." Samantha couldn't help but laugh. "They thought our movies were documentaries. Sort of. They didn't understand fiction. They saw our disaster movies where humanity panics and falls apart, and they expected the same response to a real invasion." This information spread quickly through the Resistance network. Somehow, knowing the aliens had so fundamentally misunderstood humanity gave people hope. They had underestimated Earth from the beginning. 2 weeks later, Samantha led the largest operation yet, a coordinated attack on a Ricarian command center in what was once Seattle. 300 resistance fighters moved under cover of night, using the sewers and subway tunnels the aliens rarely monitored. "Remember," Samantha told her team before they moved out, "our goal is their database and any technology we can carry. We hit hard, we grab what we need, and we disappear. No heroes today." The attack began with precision. Teams with modified pressure washers sprayed bacteria-laden water at ventilation ducts. Other groups used homemade explosives to breach the lower levels where security was lightest. The aliens responded with characteristic efficiency, but lacked the flexibility to counter the humans' adaptive tactics. Lisa Bennett, now Samantha's intelligence officer after escaping Pentagon captivity, led the team targeting the command center's data core, "We need 10 minutes," she said as they reached the central chamber. "You've got 5, Samantha replied, firing her scavenged alien weapon at approaching guards. Lisa worked frantically, connecting their custom-built drives to the alien systems. Kevin had prepared software that could extract and partially translate the alien database without triggering security protocols. "Got it," Lisa announced exactly 4 minutes later. "Everything they have on their fleet movements, communication codes, and deployment plans." The retreat was as chaotic as the entry, but the resistance fighters moved according to well-rehearsed plans. They scattered into dozens of small groups, each taking different escape routes. Some wouldn't make it back, the cost of war. But most would return with the most valuable prize yet, information that could change the course of the conflict. Back at the bunker, as Lisa and Kevin began analyzing the stolen data, cheers erupted. Word of the successful raid spread quickly via the resistance network. For the first time since the invasion, humanity had scored a significant victory against the Ricarians. In alien command ships orbiting Earth, the news was received differently. High Commander Zoll faced his war council with fury barely contained. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours." One officer dared to speak. "We may have miscalculated, Commander. Their adaptation rate exceeds our models, and they seem immune to fear tactics that worked on other worlds." Zoll stared out at the blue planet below. "Increase processing operations. Double the patrols. Find their hiding places and eliminate them." But even as he gave the orders, a new sensation crept through him. The humans called it doubt. The Ricarian Empire had conquered 17 species across the galaxy. None had resisted like these humans. None had adapted so quickly or fought so fiercely. For the first time, the question formed in his mind. What if we cannot win this war? The captured Ricarian sat motionless in the reinforced chair. Its skin had a sickly blue-gray color, and its 4 long fingers tapped nervously on the metal table. The human resistance called him Alpha, the first live alien they had managed to capture intact. Dr. Susan Clark entered the room carefully. Before the invasion, she had been a linguistic anthropologist at a university in Boston. Now she was the Resistance's best hope for understanding their enemy. "Hello again," she said calmly, sitting across from Alpha. "Are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" The alien's large, dark eyes studied her. "Your concern appears genuine. This is puzzling." Susan smiled slightly. "Why is that puzzling?" "Lesser species are not typically shown care once conquered." She took notes as they spoke. Each conversation revealed more about Ricarian society. "We don't consider ourselves lesser, Alpha. That's one thing you need to understand about humans." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. 17 species before you also claimed superiority. All now serve the Empire." "Tell me about these other species," Susan prompted. She had used this technique in dozens of sessions, gradually, building trust and extracting valuable information. Alpha spoke for nearly an hour about worlds Susan could barely imagine. Planets of gas giants who communicated through color changes, crystalline beings who lived for thousands of years, aquatic civilizations that had developed technology underwater. All had fallen to the Ricarians. "None resisted as humans have," Alpha admitted finally. "This was unexpected." Susan leaned forward. "Why was it unexpected? Your technology is primitive, your planet divided, your species spends resources fighting each other. All indicators suggested quick submission. But you were wrong about—" Alpha's fingers stopped tapping. "Yes, the High Council debates this anomaly constantly. Some advocate for complete planetary sterilization. Others see value in studying human resilience." Susan felt a chill at how casually the alien discussed genocide. "And what do you think, Alpha?" The alien was silent for a long moment. "I think we may have made a mistake." In another part of the Resistance base, Major Eric Johnson prepared his team for their most dangerous mission yet. After weeks of planning and using the intelligence gathered from the Seattle raid, they were ready to infiltrate a Ricarian research vessel in Earth orbit. "We have one shot at this," Eric told the 6 men and women who had volunteered. All were former special forces from various countries, now united against a common enemy. The shuttle we captured has been modified to transmit Ricarian identification codes. We'll have approximately 12 hours before they detect the forgery. What's our primary objective? Asked Natalie Green, his second in command. Eric pointed to the holographic map they had created from stolen data. Here, their main research laboratory. Our intelligence suggests they're developing something specifically for use against humans. We need to find out what it is. They launched that night from a hidden airfield in what had once been northern Canada. The captured shuttle performed better than expected, approaching the massive research vessel without raising alarms. Wearing modified Ricarian environmental suits, they looked enough like the aliens to pass casual inspection. The boarding went smoothly. The research vessel was enormous, with curved corridors that seemed to go on forever. Following memorized paths, Eric led his team toward the central laboratory section. Something's wrong, Natalie whispered as they approached their target. Security is too light. She was right. They had encountered only 3 patrols easily avoided. The laboratory doors opened without resistance. Inside, the sight made them freeze. Hundreds of containers lined the walls, each filled with biological samples. Human blood, tissue, organs, all carefully preserved and labeled. But most disturbing were the simulation screens showing planet-wide dispersal patterns. They're creating a bioweapon, Eric realized, scanning the alien text with his translator, specifically designed to target human DNA. How close are they? Natalie asked. Eric studied the data. Final testing phase. Deployment scheduled within 30 days. He pointed to a map showing initial release points. Major population centers still under human control. We need to copy everything and destroy this lab, he decided. As they worked, downloading data and planting explosives, an alarm suddenly blared. They had been discovered. Stick to the plan, Eric ordered as his team finished their work. Fall back to extraction point B. The firefight was intense. 2 team members fell, but the others made it to their backup exit route. The laboratory explosives detonated behind them, destroying years of Ricarian research. As they fought their way back to the shuttle, Eric realized they had accomplished something beyond their mission. They had proven that humans could strike the aliens even in orbit. The shuttle escaped, damaged but functional enough to make the descent back to Earth. The information they brought back changed everything. In the main Resistance Command Center, Samantha Wright studied the recovered data with growing horror and determination. Lisa Bennett and Kevin Howard worked nearby, analyzing the complex information. They've been testing specific bioweapons on captured humans, Lisa explained. They're trying to find something that will kill us without damaging the planet's resources, but there's something else, Kevin added, pointing to a section of the data. Look at the communication logs. There's massive disagreement among their leadership about Earth. The translations were rough but clear enough. The Ricarian Empire was not as unified as they pretended. Some military leaders questioned the invasion of Earth, noting the unprecedented casualties they were suffering. Others pointed out that no previous conquest had taken this long or cost so many Ricarian lives. They're afraid of us, Samantha realized with surprise. Not exactly afraid, Lisa corrected. They're confused. Their society is completely hierarchical with rigid castes and strict protocols. Human unpredictability doesn't fit into their understanding of how species behave. Frank Carter, who had joined the resistance leadership after his discovery of the aliens' biological weakness, laughed harshly. Good. Let's confuse them more. The information from Alpha and the space mission was combined into a comprehensive picture of their enemy. The Ricarians had conquered many worlds but always followed the same pattern. Shock and awe, demonstrate overwhelming force, then systematic control. Resistance was typically brief or non-existent. Humans were the first species to resist effectively after the initial conquest phase. The first to adapt the aliens' own technology against them. The first to exploit biological weaknesses the Ricarians didn't even know they had. We need to share this with every resistance cell worldwide, Samantha decided, especially the technical specs of their ships and weapons. Within days, using the old ham radio network, resistance groups across the planet received detailed information about Vricarian technology, biology, and sociology. More importantly, they received something that had been in short supply: hope. In Brazil, resistance fighters used the new information to disable alien communication towers. In Russia, they targeted the environmental systems of Vricarian outposts. In Australia, they contaminated the water supply to alien bases with Earth bacteria. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were on the defensive. Their rigid command structure struggled to adapt to simultaneous attacks using different methods across the globe. High Commander Zol faced the holographic images of the Vricarian High Council with growing dread. Their glowing eyes showed no mercy. "Your failure is unprecedented," said the Supreme Leader. "No conquest has faced such resistance." "These humans are unlike any species we have encountered," Zol tried to explain. "They adapt quickly. They use our own technology against us. Excuses," interrupted another council member. "Perhaps new leadership is required." Zol bowed his head. "Grant me one more cycle. I will demonstrate that Earth can still be brought under control." The council reluctantly agreed, but Zol knew his time was running out. He must crush the human resistance quickly and completely. No more measured responses. No more strategic patience. "Prepare the mass harvesters," he ordered his subordinates. "If we cannot control these humans, we will eliminate them and take this planet's resources directly." The war for Earth was entering its most dangerous phase. 1 year had passed since the Vricarians arrived. The world had changed beyond recognition. Cities lay in ruins, but from those ruins, humanity had risen with unexpected strength. The resistance was no longer just scattered groups fighting for survival. It had become a global force. Carol Martinez stared at her computer screen, checking for flaws in her latest program. Before the invasion, she had designed video games in San Diego. Now she used those same skills to create simulation programs that predicted Vricarian patrol patterns. "It's ready," she told Samantha Wright, who stood behind her watching the colored dots move across a digital map of Chicago. "Based on 6 months of data, this predicts their movements with 94% accuracy." Samantha studied the patterns. "They really never change their routines, do they?" "Never. That's their biggest weakness," Carol replied. "They follow the same patrol routes, same times, same number of soldiers. They can't imagine that we'd notice and exploit such obvious patterns." This information would be crucial for Operation Thunderstrike, the first global coordinated assault on Vricarian installations. After months of small victories, the resistance was ready for something bigger. In underground bases around the world, humans prepared. They had salvaged alien technology and combined it with human ingenuity to create new weapons and defenses. Engineers had reverse-engineered Vricarian energy weapons. Chemists had developed more potent compounds that targeted alien biology. Paul Dixon had made the biggest breakthrough. In his lab beneath the ruins of Chicago, he held up a vial of clear liquid. "This is it," he told Samantha and the other resistance leaders gathered around him. "A virus that specifically targets Vricarian DNA. It won't harm humans or any Earth species." "How effective is it?" Frank Carter asked, eyeing the vial. 100%, Paul answered quietly. "It attacks their nervous system. Death comes within hours of exposure." The room fell silent as they considered the implications. They had the means to potentially wipe out the entire invading force. "How do we deploy it?" Samantha finally asked. "That's the problem," Paul admitted. "It needs to be released into their environmental systems. Their ships, bases, and suits are completely sealed. We would need access to their central air filtration systems, preferably on the mothership." The mothership, the massive vessel that had remained in orbit since the invasion began. No human had ever set foot on it. "So we need to get in there," Samantha said, her voice firm. "Then that's what we'll do." Operation Thunderstrike began at dawn. Across the globe, resistance cells launched simultaneous attacks on key Vricarian installations. In New York, fighters destroyed power generators. In Beijing, They targeted communication arrays. In Cairo, they attacked transport depots. The Ricarians responded with their usual efficiency, but for once they were overwhelmed by the scale of the assault. Their rigid command structure couldn't adapt to so many different attacks happening at once. Lieutenant Dan Foster led a team of 20 fighters through the ruins of London. Their target, a Ricarian shuttle bay at the edge of the occupation zone. Intelligence suggested it housed intact shuttles that could potentially reach the mothership. "Remember," Dan told his team as they approached, "we need that shuttle in one piece. Focus fire on the guards, not the vehicles." They moved silently through the rain-soaked streets. Years of special forces training before the invasion had prepared Dan for this moment. When they reached the perimeter, they used modified alien weapons to take out the sentries without raising alarms. "Security is lighter than expected," his second-in-command whispered. Dan nodded. "They've pulled forces to respond to the main attacks, just as we planned." Inside the shuttle bay, 6 Ricarian vessels stood ready for launch. Dan's team quickly secured the area, eliminating the few remaining aliens with targeted strikes. "Jones, Chen, get on board and figure out how to fly this thing," Dan ordered. "Everyone else, defensive positions. They'll realize what we're after soon enough." The counterattack came 20 minutes later. Ricarian forces converged on the shuttle bay. From all directions, Dan's team held them off with determination born from a year of fighting for survival. "We've got it," Chen called from inside the shuttle. "Basic controls figured out. We can fly this thing." "Everyone fall back to the shuttle," Dan ordered. "Controlled. Retreat. Cover each other." Not everyone made it. 6 fighters fell defending their position, but the others managed to board the shuttle. Chen, who had spent months studying stolen Ricarian technology, activated the engines. "Hold on," she warned as the shuttle lifted off. "This won't be smooth." The vessel shot upward through London's rainy sky, pursued by smaller alien craft. Chen pushed the unfamiliar controls to their limits, weaving between buildings before climbing toward the clouds. "We made it," Dan breathed as they broke through the atmosphere into the darkness of space. "Send the signal." The success of their mission was broadcast to resistance cells worldwide. For the first time, humans had captured a fully functional Ricarian shuttle, the key to accessing the mothership. In the resistance headquarters, Samantha received the news with grim satisfaction. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare Phase 2. Phase 2 is even more ambitious." While the Ricarians scrambled to respond to worldwide attacks, Dr. Alan White worked around the clock in his hidden lab in New Zealand. He had been perfecting the virus Paul Dixon had developed, making it more resilient and easier to disperse. "It's ready," he told his team as he sealed the final container. "Once released into their air systems, it will spread to any connected Ricarian environment within hours." The container was carefully transported to a secret meeting point where Dan Foster's team had landed the stolen shuttle. A specially selected group would attempt what had seemed impossible just months ago, infiltrating the Ricarian mothership. Samantha herself would lead the mission. Lisa Bennett and Kevin Howard would join her, along with several other specialists chosen for their unique skills. "This is our one shot," Samantha told the team as they prepared to board. According to Kevin's analysis of their communications, the Ricarians are planning something big, mass harvesters to strip Earth of resources. "We have to stop them now." The captured shuttle, now modified with human technology and loaded with the virus, lifted off under cover of darkness. Using the identification codes they had stolen, they approached the massive mothership hanging in orbit like a dark cloud over Earth. "Transmitting clearance codes now," Kevin said, his fingers moving across the alien console. Tense minutes passed as they waited for a response. Finally, the communication system crackled. "Shuttle TR-417, you are cleared for docking Bay 12, came the alien voice. "Prepare for inspection upon arrival." The team exchanged nervous glances. They were wearing modified Ricarian environmental suits, but a close inspection would reveal they were human. "We'll deal with that when we dock," Samantha decided. "Everyone, remember the plan. Primary objective is to reach the central environmental control system and release the virus. Secondary objective is to gather any intelligence on their fleet movements and future plans. As the shuttle approached the enormous vessel, they got their first close look at the mothership. It was larger than any human structure ever built, with strange angles and surfaces that seemed to absorb light. This was the heart of the invasion, the command center that had directed the attack on Earth. "Beginning docking sequence," Kevin announced, trying to keep his voice steady. The shuttle slid into the designated bay, mechanical arms extending to secure it in place. Through the viewport, they could see Vricarian guards approaching for the routine inspection. "Here we go," Samantha said, checking her weapon one last time. For Earth. The fight for humanity's survival was about to enter its final phase. The mothership's docking bay was enormous, large enough to hold dozens of shuttles. As their stolen vessel locked into place, Samantha and her team prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The fate of Earth rested on their success. "Inspection. Team approaching," Kevin whispered, watching through a small viewport. "4 guards," Samantha nodded to the others. "Remember, we need to be quick and quiet." When the docking door opened, the Vricarian inspection team entered with weapons ready. They never had a chance to use them. Lisa and Eric moved with practiced speed, using modified stun weapons that exploited the alien's nervous system. Within seconds, all 4 guards lay unconscious. "Drag them inside and take their uniforms," Samantha ordered. "We need their access badges." Dressed in Vricarian gear with helmets that obscured their human features, the team stepped out into the mothership. They had studied stolen maps for weeks, but nothing prepared them for the reality of being inside the massive vessel. The corridors seemed endless, curving in strange patterns that disoriented human senses. "This way to the central air system," Lisa said, consulting a small device that translated the alien symbols on the walls. They moved cautiously, passing aliens who paid them little attention. Their disguises worked better than expected. The Vricarians, so confident in their security, never imagined humans could infiltrate their command ship. "Something's wrong," Kevin said suddenly, stopping to study a data terminal. "There's increased activity throughout the ship, security protocols being raised." Samantha felt a chill. "Have we been discovered?" "I don't think it's us," Kevin replied, his eyes widening as he read the alien text. "It's Operation Thunderstrike. The global attacks have them scrambling. They're preparing to launch what they call Final Protocol, some kind of massive weapon deployment against Earth." "We need to move faster," Samantha decided. "How much farther to the air system?" "2 more levels down," Lisa answered, "but security will be heavier there." As they approached a major junction, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along the corridors. Their luck had run out. A group of Vricarian officers rounded the corner ahead, immediately noticing something wrong with the disguised humans. "Intruders," one shouted in their alien language, but the meaning was clear. The firefight was brief, but intense. The human team had the advantage of surprise and desperation. When it ended, they had suffered their first casualty. Greg Peters lay dead, a hole burned through his chest by an alien weapon. "We can't stop," Samantha said grimly, kneeling briefly by her fallen comrade. "The mission comes first." They ran now, abandoning stealth for speed. More alarms sounded. The ship's internal security systems had detected the human intruders. Barrier doors began closing throughout the vessel. "The air control center is just ahead," Lisa called, pointing to a heavily reinforced door at the end of the corridor. Kevin rushed to the control panel, using the access codes they had stolen. The door remained sealed. "They've changed the protocols. I can't get in." Eric stepped forward with a determined expression. "Stand back." He placed explosive charges around the door frame, a last resort they had hoped to avoid. The explosion rocked the corridor, alerting every Vricarian on the ship to their location. But the door was open. They rushed inside the environmental control center, securing it quickly. 2 Vricarian technicians fell before they could raise an alarm. "Seal the door," Samantha ordered as she surveyed the complex machinery. "How long will it take you to access the air system?" Kevin immediately began working at the central console. 5 minutes, maybe less. "Make it 3. We won't have more than that." Outside, they could hear the sounds of Ricarian forces gathering. Heavy weapons being positioned, orders being shouted. Lisa moved to another console, her eyes widening as she accessed the ship's main data core. Samantha, you need to see this. The final protocol. It's worse than we thought. They're planning to release a toxin that will kill every human on Earth while leaving the planet's resources intact. Timeline. Deployment in 20 minutes. It's already loaded into launch tubes. Samantha made a quick decision. New plan. Kevin, keep working on the air system. Lisa, can you access the weapon controls from here? I think so, but what are you planning? If we can't stop the launch, maybe we can redirect it. While Kevin worked to connect their virus to the ship's air circulation system, Lisa fought through layer after layer of alien security protocols. Eric and the remaining team members reinforced the door, preparing for the inevitable assault. The first explosion against the sealed door shook the entire room. The Ricarians were using heavy weapons now. They knew exactly what was at stake. Door won't hold much longer, Eric reported. Almost there, Kevin called, his hands flying across the alien controls. Just need to override the final safety protocols. Another explosion. The door began to glow red from the heat of the Ricarian weapons. Done, Kevin finally shouted. Virus entering the air system now. On screens around the room, they could see status indicators changing as the colorless, odorless virus spread through the ship's ventilation. It would take minutes to reach every section, but already they could hear the effects. Alarms, changing tone, confused shouting from the Ricarians. Outside. What about the weapons? Samantha asked, turning to Lisa. I've accessed the launch controls, Lisa reported, but I can't stop the countdown. It's linked directly to the High Commander's authorization. Then redirect them. Can you change the targets? Lisa's face showed grim determination. Yes, but the only targets I can select are other Ricarian ships. Samantha didn't hesitate. Do it. Redirect every weapon to their own fleet. The door finally gave way. Ricarian soldiers poured into the room, weapons firing. Eric and two others fell immediately. Kevin was hit in the shoulder but kept working. Samantha and Lisa took cover behind equipment, returning fire. Weapons retargeted, Lisa shouted above the chaos. Launching in 30 seconds. A tall figure stepped through the smoke of battle. High Commander Zol himself, his armor more elaborate than the others. He locked eyes with Samantha across the room. You have lost, human, he stated coldly. Your species was impressive but ultimately futile. Samantha stood, facing him directly despite the danger. You're wrong. Look around you, Commander. Your soldiers are already showing symptoms of our virus. And in about 10 seconds, your own weapons will fire on your fleet. Confusion showed on the alien's face, then horror as he realized she was telling the truth. He rushed to a console, trying desperately to abort the launch. Too late. On the main view screen, they watched as the mothership's weapons fired, not at Earth, but at the surrounding Ricarian vessels. Explosions bloomed silently in the blackness of space as ship after ship was hit. High Commander Zol turned to Samantha, his body already trembling from the effects of the virus. What have you done? We've ended your invasion, she replied simply. Earth is not yours to take. As the Ricarian forces in the room collapsed one by one, overcome by the virus, Samantha made her way to the ship's communication array. With Kevin's help, she broadcast a message to the entire Ricarian Empire, showing images of their defeated fleet and the humans who had caused it. To any who hear this, she said, her voice steady, this is Earth. We are not an easy conquest. We are not weak. Any species that attempts to invade our world will face the same fate. Remember what happened here today. Weeks later, as the last Ricarian ships fled Earth's orbit, humanity began the long process of rebuilding. The alien technology they had captured advanced their own by centuries. A unified global defense system was established to prevent future invasions. John Miller stood outside the rebuilt Arecibo Observatory, gazing up at the stars that now seemed both more wonderful and more threatening than before. As the astronomer who had first detected the alien signals, he had watched humanity's darkest hour and its finest. What do you think is out there now? asked a young assistant joining him. John smiled. More life, more civilizations, some friendly, some not. But they all know about Earth now. They know what happens when you underestimate humans. Across the galaxy, word spread among spacefaring civilizations. The small blue planet at the edge of an unremarkable solar system was home to the most dangerous species yet encountered. They looked harmless. Their technology seemed primitive, but when threatened, they became the most formidable force in the known universe. They had made the Vricarians pay for their mistake, and the stars themselves now watched Earth with new respect.